Hello, hello. We will just give it a couple of minutes to let the notifications go out, and we know that sometimes that can take some time. So once you get it, glad to have you on here. Happy to see you. Hey, Kimmy. Yeah, it's taken a little bit for the notifications to go out tonight, but that's okay. I try to pick a good time, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. Welcome everyone. Yeah, this has kind of really been quite the journey for me over the last couple of weeks. The Lord's really been talking to me a lot about the P.I.T. That is life. You know, just the processes, the preparation, his promises, our purpose, us in our purpose, and within that purpose are his promises and, his plans and all of those things. And I think sometimes, at least really what he's been talking to me a lot about, is that sometimes we really just kind of get things jumbled up and out of order, and you can sprinkle in some misunderstanding and add in some frustration, and then we begin to have this recipe of what the heck is going on, God, right? And hey, Dar, and so I just really been thinking a lot about this, and the beginning of this started kind of going on this journey over the last couple of weeks. He really just had me diving into Joseph's life, the whole story of Joseph, and just everything that he began and his process. It was not anything like the dream that he was given, right? It was the furthest thing from it. And so that's kind of what I really wanted to start off talking about with tonight's broadcast. Hey, Danny. Absolutely, sweetie. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I'm missing you. Just as you come on, pop up there, say hello so I can see who's on here. I can say hello to you and welcome you. Thank you for taking your time to spend with me tonight. I know I don't do these very often, but when the Lord tells me to do them, I know he's really trying to say something. And so what I was supposed to start off with tonight was about Joseph, but the more I really started to, once I knew the Lord wanted me to do a broadcast, the more I started preparing for it, the more I just really felt, burdened, and he really led me into a deep dive with Abraham. And I know I've talked about Abraham before, probably a year or two ago, but this time around, I just kind of felt kind of that heartbreak and that heaviness over those promises. And so I kind of wanted to just kind of talk about a little bit about the P.I.T. that is this life. It's our lives are such a, hey, Sarah, my love, how you doing, girly? Our lives are just so, like, his purpose on our lives is so far beyond our life and our ability, right? And in this P.I.T., this process, in this training, in his timing, our purpose as we walk in it, he sets dreams and plans and promises within us that we desire to be part of that fulfillment. And really what he's been talking to me a lot about are the P's of that P.I.T. It's all in his timing. It's in our training, right? Hi, Sue. And so he gave me all of these P words that really just spoke a lot to me you know, this life. It can bring places that feel like prisons and pits. There are painful periods of time. But in all of that, it's part of our preparation. It causes us to pursue him at a deeper level. It gives us perseverance. It grows our patience. We understand it as part of our processing, you know, our process and our growing in wisdom and understanding, our maturity, right? But in all of that, there's also purifying that happens. You know, when we want to walk as Christ walked, that means that we are having to get rid of a lot of our flesh. It means that we're getting rid of a lot of things that don't necessarily reflect him. You know, and all of that pain and all that negative kind of stuff, there are also those pinnacles and those peaks, right? But really what he began to talk to me a lot about was with Abraham, you know, and I think a lot of us, we have so many, I'm so sorry for my voice tonight. It's just really kind of, you know, it's supposed to be good when you know, your voice starts going. So I apologize. We begin to receive, you know, prophetic words and promises, and all of a sudden, you know, they kind of become our focal point. And there's a part of that it's okay. It's okay to focus on that, because what I began to see are these dreams and these promises, these prophetic words that are spoken into us, that really, we really just, in a sense, we drink those in, and they become our fuel for this journey called life, right? And hi, I'm just going to pause here for just a moment. I'm just going to welcome everybody. Hello, hello. Hi, Emily. Hi, Mary Lou. I think I already said hi to you, Sue. Ria, Arjan. I think I said your name right. Rowena. Hello, hello. As you feel led, just please share. I really feel like this is really something that a lot of people need in this moment of time. Not necessarily to hear my voice, but to hear the heart of the Father for you all. Because this was a very, and has been, and will continue to be a very personal journey for me, for all of us, right? Because we are all in process. We are all in our purpose, trying to walk out the plans and the dreams and the promises that the Lord has for us. But what he began to talk to me about a lot was just perspective. That perspective of not looking at where we are currently positioned. You know, I've talked, I don't remember when it was, but I talked a lot about Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, right? About that perspective where we station ourselves where we're currently at, but then we set our vision in the ramparts, that higher perspective, that higher point of view. And it all comes down to, hi, Kelly, it all comes down to us seated in that heavenly place. And when we have that perspective in our heavenly places, we realize that this life that we are living, this walk that we are in, is so, you know, it's so beyond anything that we could ever say or do, right? Because we are a very small part of a very big picture, but each small part is absolutely important. It is absolutely imperative that we each do everything that we are set to do, because everything that each of us was set to do brings an ignition to somebody else's purpose, right? Because we are so interwoven, we are so connected. All of humanity, we are so connected, and when we don't walk in that, we kind of drop the ball in a sense. I mean, it's kind of a harsh way to say that, but we kind of drop the ball, and we don't bring that fuel to ignite others around us so that they can fully walk in everything that they were set to do, right? And so that is really what I just asked the Lord to use me to do tonight, is to ignite and pour some fuel on the fires for you guys, to really expand the vision and really expand the perspective of how very important you are, and to help kind of pull you up out of any frustrated place that you might be. And I just wanted to state, you know, that we are given those gifts and those dreams, and, you know, and we're set within our purpose, and within that purpose are the promises and the plans. And if we don't remain balanced in our perspective, that gives way for frustration and disappointment. We've talked a lot about that this year, correct? And just to kind of be Captain Obvious here for a moment, you know, this life, it's not about, you know, reaching some pinnacle, or some, you know, some achievement or recognition. And although we have moments like that within our life, that's not the end goal, right? The end goal is heaven. And everything up until that point is our process. It's us walking in our purpose, and it's igniting others that are around us, and dreaming those dreams, and feasting on those promises, because those promises are for now and for future. And when I began to talk to the Lord about that, you know, he began to just kind of download some things to me. Hi, Esther. And, you know, he said, you know, we have a purpose. Each and every one of us has a purpose. And we walk through his plans within that purpose. It doesn't matter if we stumble and fall. There's still plans to get us walking in our purpose, right? It's a lot harder to detour God and his purpose within you than you think. You know, and those plans are our dreams and those promises. And like I said, we drink that in as fuel for the journey. You know, they do bring us comfort, but that's not the sole purpose. The sole purpose is for kingdom. And that's what I meant when I said it's for us to ignite each other. And that's when the Lord really started talking to me a lot about Abraham. Because before he was Abraham, he was Abram. And when he was Abram, the Lord showed him the vastness of the stars as his inheritance. And yet he didn't possess any of it. He was 75 years old. He had no children. And yet the Lord was telling him, the number of the stars is your inheritance, right? And then at the end of this waiting period, I'm going to cover this a little bit more in detail in just a moment. He's shown the stars, but then he's given one child. Talk about perspective, right? And so I wanted to just go through some of that with you guys, kind of a Cliff's Notes, skipping and jumping, because I really felt like this is important. Hi, Suzanne. I really felt that this was important, that when he was Abram, this is back in Genesis chapter 12. When he was Abram, he was instructed to leave his family and his country, right? And the Lord at that point in time, chapter 12, verse 2 says, I will make you a great nation. Now that's a little odd being 75 years old and not having a child. But down in verse 7, it says, to your offspring, the children you don't have yet. You know, this is how the Lord works. He speaks things into us, even though we don't have possession of it yet. Again, fuel for the journey, right? So in verse 7, he says, to your offspring, I will give this land. So when the Lord spoke that promise to him in chapter 12, verse 7, Abram's response was to build an altar. That altar says to me, I receive that word. I receive that promise, right? It was a marking of a moment. And, you know, he didn't go running off going, I've got offspring and I'm going to have children the number of the stars, right? It was just this quiet, I received this promise from the Lord. And he built this altar. And then in verse 8, you know, he continued his journey into Bethel. He pitched a tent, and then he built another altar. But this altar, he was asking the Lord for direction. So on our journey, on our way to, take these next steps forward to obtain this promise, we have to ask for direction. Again, widening our perspective, not focusing on that one thing that was just spoken, but understanding there are a lot of working parts in order to get there. So we have to have direction, and the best one to ask for direction is the Lord. Okay, so then you move down to chapter 13, verse 14. And again, the Lord spoke this promise again to him again. That the land that he was seeing is the land that the Lord is going to give to his offspring. Again, speaking about an inheritance to the children that he does not yet have. And then in verse 18, he builds another altar. He builds another altar. I just want to stop right here for just a moment, because this is where I really started feeling the heaviness. I feel like there has been a lot of times in a period of time that many of us have received promises, prophetic words, dreams, speaking to the offspring we do not yet have. And we've built our altars. We've asked for direction, and we're waiting. And I believe that what the Lord is saying to us right now is keep going, that it's coming. That I'm speaking to children you don't yet have, but you're going to have these children, so to speak, right? You're going to receive these promises, because what the Lord says, his promises are yes and amen. Yes, and so be it. It will be. He spoke it. It will be, right? And I think that when periods of time pass, we either drop the ball, we drop the promise, and we forget about the altars. We forget about those moments where we really just received that thing and said, oh, thank you, God. I know that's for me, because there's something that's set within you from the time you were created, that you were meant to receive those promises. Those promises are for you, and they're part of your purpose as you walk on this earth. Those children are needed for this earth, because the Lord is multi-purposed and multi-generational in everything that he says and does. Again, our small part, but very important. If Abraham didn't do what he did, would we be his children? No, we wouldn't be part of that lineage, correct? So anyway, I just wanted to pause there for a moment and just say that, because I really believe the Lord is just speaking so loudly right now, because he does not want you battling frustration. He doesn't want you battling doubt. This is not that time to do that. Right now is the time to get our faith up, our expectations so high, like Ephesians 3:20 high. I know I feel like I'm on repeat with this, but it's our expectations have to be fertile ground for the miraculous to grow. And in my opinion, I want my fertile soil to look a lot like Ephesians 3:20. The manifestations of Ephesians 3:20. Can I even talk tonight? That it's above and beyond anything I could ask, think, or imagine. And I can tell you something right now and be just real honest. I can imagine some pretty crazy things, some pretty amazing God-sized things that my imagination can grasp a hold of. But he's saying that it's going to be above and beyond that. That's the fertile soil that I want to lay out and around my life, because I want him to come in and do that thing, right? Some of those promises are God-sized promises that you cannot do on your own. And I think sometimes within that, we have that frustration, correct? All right, so I wanted to go down and read to you Genesis chapter 15. And just a couple of verses, because I think it's important to really grasp the context of this instead of me just kind of doing Cliff's Notes, right? So I'm just going to read you verses 1 through 5, okay? This is the NIV translation. It says, after this, This was after a battle and all this other stuff. Like I said, we're going to kind of skip through here. The word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. He's our reward, right? That's like the best thing ever. But Abram said, O sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, you have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but a son coming from your own body will be your heir. Again, the promise spoken again. He took him outside and said, Look up at the heavens and count the stars. If indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. Can you count the stars, Abram? Can you count the stars, Emily? Can you count the stars, Roxanne? Can you count the stars? Who else am I going to call out here? Esther, Kelly, can you count the stars? It's your inheritance. It's your inheritance. It's your offspring. Abram believed the Lord. Come on. I know that sometimes it's very easy to get that knee-jerk excitement, but then when you let it set in and you're going, oh my gosh, this is so stinking impossible, I don't know that I can believe you for this. Abram believed the Lord. If there's anybody you're going to believe in this life, it needs to be our Heavenly Father, the creator of all things, the one who breathed life into you, the one who sets the dreams within you. He is the only one around you that will not lie to you, that will not let you down. There is no reason to not believe him. I'm totally preaching to the choir right now because I've been there. I've been there. It is so hard. Whew, I'm going to get emotional. It is so hard to believe sometimes when the waiting has been so long. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. I so get it. But I know that the Lord wants to take this and just breathe life into all of us. And if nothing else, inflate and grow our belief in him, the one and only who will not let us down. Will not. I believe you, Lord. I believe you, Lord. I believe you, I believe you, I believe you. And there are times that we're just going to have to repeat ourselves. I believe you, I trust you. Even if we don't feel it. I believe you, I trust you. Got to be on repeat until it actually like soaks into the very marrow of your bones. I believe you, Lord, and I trust you. That what you said, you will fulfill. Right? All right. So Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Whew. Amazing. Righteousness. All right. Oh, and then I wanted to jump down to verse 8. Because this is the question I think that we all ask. Abram said, O sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? How can we know that we'll gain possession of it? Gee, let me think. It's because he said so. He said so, right? He said it. He said it, so it will be. I feel like I'm kind of repeating a little bit, but I'm a little hard-headed sometimes, so I just kind of have to repeat things to myself, right? So, then the next answer from the Lord, how will I possess it? The Lord tells him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Okay? Another altar. This one is an altar of sacrifice. This is stating, what do I need to lay down that is my own desires, my own fleshly things, my own ambition, with this promise that was just spoken over me? What do I need to sacrifice in order to receive it? And this altar was one of a tithe. Now, back in those days, a heifer was very expensive. Wealthy men had a heifer to sacrifice. A goat and a ram, again, not as expensive as a heifer, but still a costly price. But then it talks about a dove and a young pigeon. Those weren't worth as much, but some people don't have a heifer to bring to that sacrificial altar. They only have a young pigeon. But to them, that young pigeon is a sacrificial tithe, a sacrificial offering to grasp a hold of the very God-sized promise that was just spoken to them. It is not up to us to weigh what the Lord is asking us to sacrifice. Some of us, it's not a measurement or a weight. It's a heart condition. And I'm telling you, the Lord is going to ask you to lay some things down that mean a lot to you that probably don't mean much to anybody else. You know, there have been times that the Lord has had me sow into things that cost me something. It was scary, but I wanted to be obedient. And what cost me something big would have been nothing to a lot of other people. So don't you dare weigh somebody's heifer against your pigeon. I just had to say that. I know that sounded really weird. So if someone just jumped on the broadcast at that moment, that's going to be a little funny. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. You cannot compare. That's the whole comparison thing again. Don't compare. So this is also not about a checklist of must do this, check, get the promise. Must do this, check, get the promise. It ain't that way. This is all about relationship. You know, if you want to talk about a marriage, we all sacrifice some of our flesh to be married to our spouse. There's a lot of uncomfortability that comes when you're learning to live together and do life together. You give up things. You lay things down. And some things you just don't ever pick back up again because it would be detrimental to that relationship, right? To the possibility of growing and expanding and becoming someone better than you originally were before you went into that relationship with that person. How much more is that with God? He's going to ask us, how much do you love me? Do you really want the fullness of what I have for you? Well, yeah, I do. It's going to cost. It's going to cost. And it's really not that scary when you're hunger and you're passionately pursuing him. You're going, heck, I don't care what it costs. But I know it's going to be painful. I know it's going to suck, but I want more. You know, I want more of God. I want more of what he has for me. It's scary. It terrifies me, but I want more. And I want to see you guys do the same. You know, and I know I've said this a few times before as well this year, but this year has very much been the Lord saying, hey, let's go jump off that cliff and you worry about the parachute. You know, don't worry about the parachute. I'll strap it on you at some point on the way down. So let's go cliff diving without a parachute, you know, because he's got it. If he tells you to do it, he will prepare you for it and he will take care of it in the process. But in all of that, and there's still that waiting, right? In Abraham's story, there's still that waiting. I love you too, Roxanne. Can even be people. Yes, it can. It can, Laura. It absolutely can. I'll have to share that. I've got a story about that that I was able to get from my mom back when I was young and dumb. She had to put me on the altar. But anyway, in Abraham's story, he was doing all of this. He was walking in his relationship with the Lord. He was being obedient, and he was, you know, setting up these altars and just trusting the Lord about what he needed to do, because we all have to partner with God in order to bring forth that fulfillment, correct? But even in all of that, impatience brews, right? And in all of that, so at the age of 75, when Abraham, it was Abram at the time, he received that promise. 11 years later, at the age of 86, here comes Ishmael. He got tired of waiting. Sarai got tired of waiting. And, you know, the Lord sees and hears our Ishmaels. And he did redeem Ishmael a bit, right? I'm not going to go into that part, but but Ishmael was not the promise. Ishmael was not the promise. And we don't want, and this is the part where I really felt the heaviness to just really say, don't go building things that the Lord has not instructed you to build because you're tired of waiting. Don't go birthing things that the Lord didn't tell you to birth because you're tired of waiting. Don't step out and do things because you're tired of being disappointed and frustrated. The Ishmaels will be Ishmaels, but they are not the promise. And I'm telling you right now, you want the promise. So Ishmael was born. All kinds of drama came out of that. We know that. Ishmael's caused drama. And then 13 years after that, when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord then breathed on him, spoke the promise again, but this time he put a timeline on it. So at 99 years old, Abram received the promise with a timeline. By this time next year, you will have a son. Abram then also at that time had his name changed. And Abram went from Abram to Abraham. Sarai went from Sarai to Sarah. And what changed in their names in the Hebrew, if I'm understanding and teaching this correctly, it was the hay of God that was put on that. The hay is the breath of God. Sometimes in our waiting and in our process and in the continual remembrance of the promise that has been spoken to us, fuel for the waiting, there's going to be a time that comes where the breath of God is going to breathe on that thing, and then boom, here it is. Your name has been changed. The breath of God has brought life into something that has felt so long and almost dead. The life, the breath of God hits it, and then boom, there you have it. Just like that. Suddenly, 99 years old, 100 years old actually, has his first child. The promised child, not Ishmael, promised child. Holy cow, right? So when he received that, 25 years he waited for that promise. 25 years. And I know, I'm going to get choked up again. I know there are people that have been waiting that long for a promise. But suddenly, the breath of God is going to hit that thing. Just like Ezekiel. Can these dead bones live? Heck yeah, they can live. Breathe on them, Lord. Because we are standing in a moment of time where the breath of God is breathing on us now. I am telling you, since Pentecost, I was fully anticipating something just massive. My expectation, massive, to happen on Pentecost. And I do believe that that wind, that breath of God has been blowing since then. I've been feeling it and sensing it all month this month. I can't quite articulate it, but something has been moving and shifting that leaves me saying, God is saying yes and amen. It's happening, it's happening, it's happening. It's coming now. That prodigal's coming home. That thing is going to happen. This is going to be taking place. I'm moving you here. I'm taking you here. The list goes on. He is saying yes, yes, yes. Now. I'm breathing on it. Suddenly. I don't believe we are going to be having any more of these long awaited promises. And the receipt of these promises, I just need to say this, the receipt of these promises is not the end of your story. It is just the beginning. It is that next step in your purpose. Because when you take this next step at the receipt of this promise, you're going to be given another one. You're going to be given more dreams, bigger dreams. Because you've stewarded the time well and you're stewarding the promises now, you're going to be given more to steward. I'm telling you, it is a massive moment that we are in right now. Massive, massive. So keep your hopes up. Keep your expectations up. He will not disappoint, and you will not be waiting much longer. Okay. Next. Okay. This is the other part that I have to touch on. If we flip over to chapter 22, again, still in Genesis. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm missing your... I got on a roll there and I missed your comments. Okay, just in agreement. Okay, good. I'm glad we're all on the same page. Okay, so flip over to chapter 22. So now he's got Isaac. Going through all of that, right? Now the Lord is testing him. You see, once... This is, I think, where it's important to have some futuristic perspective. That's the right way to put it. Because what we need to know and understand is that although these promises are for us, Isaac was for Abraham and Sarah, but Isaac served a greater purpose than just to be their child. The promises that are so near and dear to our hearts, that mean the world to us, that I cannot wait for the day that I actually hold this thing. We have to have the perspective that, yes, it is for us, but the purpose in that promise is so much greater. It is so much beyond what our initial thoughts are of that thing. Correct? So once we receive this promise, the question that comes from this testing that we watch Abraham walk through, how tightly are we holding on to it once we receive it? Are we receiving it and going, oh, thank God, now it's finally mine. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And I'm telling you, we already have plans for that promise once we receive it, correct? How tightly are we going to hold on to it? See, I believe that in this process between Ishmael and Isaac, I believe for Abraham came a deeper level of understanding the fullness of God. Obviously, we will never wrap our heads around any of that, because if he was big enough to understand, he wouldn't be big enough for us to worship, correct? So there comes just this comfort level of, I'm learning more about you, and I know enough about you to know that whatever you ask me to do, there's a purpose in it. There's a plan in it. There's a promise in it. And so when we finally receive and possess that very thing that we've been contending for, we absolutely cannot choke it out. We cannot hold so tightly to it that we are unwilling to allow the Lord to take it and use it for what he actually purposed it for. And that, I think that test, was more for maybe the people that were watching Abraham than it was for Abraham. I don't think it was easy for Abraham, But I think Abraham, by this point in time in his life, had a very clear understanding of who God was, and the love that God had for him and Isaac and Sarah. And so what we need to do is, even at the receipt of our promise, we still need to steward that thing. If we steward it in our time, our prayers, our conversations with the Lord before we receive it, we most absolutely have to steward it after we receive it. Because when we receive that, what we have to do is turn around and go, okay, God, thank you for this. Finally, thank you for this. But this is yours. Do with it what you will. And I think that sometimes we need to be corrected in the receipt of our promises. That we are going to be told, I want you to lay it down on this altar and I want you to walk away. Can you walk away from it? Or are you just taking that promise now that you got it and you're building a stage instead of an altar? You know, there are a lot of times that we misunderstand the purpose in the promise because it's finally something that we have receipt of. You know, we have to keep building those altars of asking direction, the altars of understanding, so that we don't build a stage instead. And that can be built in many different ways. And I'm not going to go through all of that. But, you know, when Abraham saw the stars, that was the beginning of his journey, right? And in his receipt of that, to know that it began with that one child. The stars began with one. And I think that right there is the perfect perspective that we need to have over every promise that the Lord speaks in our lives. That what seems so big and huge and God-sized, and in Abraham's case, impossible. How many of us can attest to some impossible dreams and promises if we were to try to do it on our own, right? But it begins with just the one. But then that one child would then birth another child who would go on and wrestle with God and be his name changed to a nation, right? Isaac had Jacob. Jacob wrestled with God. Jacob then his name was changed to Israel. Powerful stuff. Powerful, powerful stuff when you really let it sit and marinate. And the one thing that the Lord said to me that just really was kind of that wow, was that he said we cannot allow our view of the promise of the stars to cloud our vision or motives to push us in the direction of birthing Ishmaels because we want to see it now. You know, I think worldwide it's a problem. I see it more in America. I've gotten to know a lot of people all around the world because of this amazing thing called social media. And I've seen it sticks out to me a little bit more with us here in the States with this little thing called instant gratification. That things are so easy and right at the tips of our fingers anymore that we don't wait for a thing. And if we have to wait longer than 30 seconds for our phone to turn on, we get impatient. If, that wheel of insanity, with something loading, if it takes longer than 30 seconds, this thing's not working. It's this instant gratification, and the Lord is not about that. He's about the preparation, because we have to be good stewards of everything that he gives us, whether it's wisdom, whether it's gifts, whether it is material things that he hands to us, because we are heavenly funnels. If he pours something into us, it's for us to pour right back out. And we have to be stewards of that, not storing up everything and hoarding. Because instant gratification is saying, well, I'm going to need this and this and this, and I'm going to have to do this and this and this, so I can't do this. We start justifying behavior that is not being a good steward or an obedient child of the one that just gave that thing to us. I don't know why I didn't need to say that, but I just needed to say that. Anyway, so we have to learn to wait obediently and patiently. Another one of those P's, right? Because we don't want Ishmael's, we want the promise. And those promises can and will only come from God. There's nothing that we can do other than partner with him and ask him what he needs us to do to be that good partner with him in order to bring that thing about. You know, I think if Abraham had not gone through that waiting period, had he not taken the time to really get to know God and who he is, I think that whole journey of the Lord telling him to take Isaac to the altar, I think it would have looked a lot more different if he didn't know who God really was. But that whole time, Abraham's walking with his son and with those two servants with no sacrifice, but they're going to this altar to sacrifice. And everyone's going, hey, where's the sacrifice? Where's the ram? Where's the ram? And all the time, Abraham had the instruction that Isaac was the ram, but Abraham was saying, the Lord will provide. He was speaking out, the Lord's going to provide the sacrifice. I know deep in my heart that the Lord is not going to make me kill my promise. He ain't going to take it away. He is not going to give you something and then take it back. He just wants to see how loosely you're holding on to things, how much you are trusting him to help you steward what he just gave you. It's all his. It's all his. Our children are his. I'll talk about that right now, Laura, because I think this is a good point to mention that. You know, I'm a mom of 4, and I will be their mom to the best of my ability, but I will never be as good of a parent to them as God has been to me. And knowing that actual, very true fact gives me the freedom to say, Lord, I know you've entrusted these kids with me, but I need your help. And I give them back to you so that you can work on them and help create them, grow them into who you created them to be. Use me however you will. Use my husband however you will to help steward those promises, right? And so Laura, back when I call it my young and dumb years, I was not exactly the most obedient child, very rebellious and into all kinds of stuff, and for a while just homeless because my parents could not have me living in their home. And during that period of time, my mother was an intercessor. She was a seer and she was an intercessor. And she really struggled for a lot of that time. You know, she shared all this with me, of course, after I came back to reality, right? And what she shared with me is that at the beginning parts of that journey of not knowing where I was, not knowing if she was going to get a phone call, not knowing if she was going to wake up and find like the worst nightmare ever, right? She had a lot of sleepless nights because she had that fear that every parent has. Every parent has it. You know, you can't deny it. I'm not going to lie about it. Every parent has it. But she said the Lord began to speak to her, and basically he just asked her a very point blank question of, whose daughter is she? Is she yours or is she mine? And my mom said at that point in time, the whole thing shifted for her. And she said, well, she's yours. She's yours, Lord. Amy's your child. And she said from that point on, she had such peace. She still was, you know, praying. She was still a concerned mom, but she no longer had the fear. She no longer lost sleep because she knew that he was being a better parent to me than she could be at that moment because she had no clue where I was at. She didn't know what I was doing. And it was that turning things back over. I was one of her promises, one of her 5. You know, I was one of her promises. She turned me back over to the Lord, saying, she's your daughter. Do with her what you will. And it was a very short period of time after that I began having encounters that were a little terrifying. And the Lord loves to kind of allow the plots and the plans of the enemy to take us out in order to bring us back to him. And so that's exactly what happened. You know, things started to kind of unravel in my world, and I came to a place where it's like, oh, I guess I need to go back home if my parents will let me. And of course, at that point in time, my parents are like, welcome home. You know, it was such that prodigal son, that prodigal child story, where I was squandering things. I was squandering my life. You know, I really had no vision for my life. I just kind of was on that death wish kind of thing. But the Lord took the prayers of my mother and her turning me back over to him in order to turn things around and bring me back to a place going, you know what, maybe I don't want to end this thing. You know, maybe I do want life beyond 18 years of age. So I'm just saying all of that to say our promises are for us, yes, but they serve a much bigger purpose. And I can say, I can share my mom's testimony today because of what she did back then. She didn't know that I would be doing live broadcasts and writing. I think she saw it because she was a seer and she saw everything like way in advance. It was crazy how accurate her sight was. So I'm sure she did see a lot more of this than I even did. But, you know, her promise was for her, but it's also for something so much more. Stuff I can't even wrap my head around, right? So, yes, our promises are for us, and they're for our joy, and they're for our comfort, and they're for all of those amazing things, because our daddy is a good daddy, and he loves to give good gifts. But those good gifts that are for us and for our happiness and our joy, and they do bring us comfort, they're multi-purposed. And yes, she was, Brad. Absolutely, she was. You know, they're just so much bigger. So much bigger. And, you know, this year will mark 12 years since my mom has been in heaven. And a couple of years ago, maybe it wasn't even 2 years ago, maybe it was 1 year ago, someone shared with me a dream. I think it was a dream they had of my mom. And basically the dream was her standing at the bottom of this staircase, and the staircase led up onto a stage. And what they saw was all these people around her, and she was praying over them, but they were all just at the bottom of the staircase. And then this person saw me kind of walk up there, but then she like grabbed my hand and took me up the stairs and shoved me onto the stage. And in that dream, you know, that says to me, that's what us parents do. And that's what we do with our promises. We do all that we can do, and then we usher it to the next place that it's supposed to go. Those kids, you know, our ceiling is their floor. And that's what that dream said to me. What my mom's ceiling was my floor to walk into whatever the Lord had set within me. But it's all in that release. It's all in that trust to just turn everything back over to the Lord, right? All right. So our perseverance in the waiting, you know, it brings that deep level of understanding of God and who he is. Because we have to be able to understand him at deeper levels than just being this checklist, this prayer list, you know, because we all kind of walk through that stage when we're in our infancy in our relationship with Christ. It does kind of start off a bit like, Lord, I really want to see this happen. Lord, I love to see this, and can we move to this or this or this, and it can kind of sound a little bit, I mean, I don't want to sound awful saying this, but a little bit like a Santa Claus-God relationship, where we kind of go and we sit on his lap and we read off our list, and he loves to hear that. He loves for us to sit on his lap and talk to him about those things, because those things are important. You know, what's important to us is important to him. But there's a deeper level that comes beyond that list. And so when we do that, when we walk through that process and that perseverance, he prepares us for that promise, right? Because if we're not prepared, back to that stewardship thing, we won't steward it well. And we have to steward it well. You know, like with Joseph, you know, if we can't steward the actual dream, how are we going to steward the actual receipt of the thing? You know, there are a lot of dreams that we've been given that are so big and so vast, and yet we are not in a place right now where we could steward that thing well. What we need to do is steward our time and our relationship with the Lord, and that includes asking him for the purification that needs to happen, because there are certain things in certain promises where there cannot be fleshly desires attached to those, because those are kingdom things. And if we have our fleshly desires and our dream of making it big and our name be known, you ain't ready. You're not ready, because it is not about your name. It's not about your face. It's not about your voice. It's about him. It's about his glory. It's about his name, his face. Can I just say that? Let me see. I've jumped all over the place and now I'm lost on my notes. Oh well. Welcome to my squirrel rave. Anyway, where was I at here? So holding on to it loosely. There we go. Because we know it's God's anyway, right? And it's his to place however, whenever, and wherever he pleases. And we got to be okay with that, right? You know, and it, you know, we in our dreams and our promises, you know, understanding that they are just small but very important parts of the vastness of his creation and the ultimate plan of everything. And we are all being used to bring reconciliation to everyone, reconciliation to relationships, reconciliation to him. That's the ultimate thing, right? Bringing reconciliation to him. And so there was a couple of things that the Lord gave me that I really felt important to just speak, because there's a lot of things, there have been a lot of battles, I should say. Rabbit trails are the best. Yeah, they are, Brad. I go on a lot of them. And so there's a lot of things that as we're walking through this, there is always, hey, Kelly, there is always, you know, some opposition. There are always going to come some conflicts. You know, it's just part of it, right? It's part of it. And if we remain in our heavenly places, we're going to understand that opposition really can't affect us. But these are some things that the Lord gave me to just speak. I'm just going to let it rip. So here we go. It says, okay, so the first one, he took me all the way back to Adam, Cain and Abel, right? And the Lord said, there will be Cains wanting to hold their position as the elder and brewing jealousy for what you carry and offer up to the Lord. But know that you are protected, and they will not be able to kill what you carry. I know the Lord gave me these because I know some of you are on here that have dealt with this already, or are kind of walking through it, or are starting to sense that you might be dealing with that at some point here in the very near future. I want you to know you are protected, and no matter what that Cain tries to say or do, they cannot cannot. They will try, but again, no weapon formed will prosper, right? They cannot kill what you carry. They cannot kill your worship. They cannot kill what you bring to the Lord. Absolutely cannot. So just want to say that to you. All right. Then we jump a little further ahead in the Bible here. He said, there will be brothers like Joseph's who will toss you into a pit and sell you off to the highest bidder out of their desire to keep favor and attention off of you. Their talks and plots will only increase the Lord's favor on you. Again, no weapon formed will prosper. There are just going to be people that are like this that come in and out of your life. It's okay. We're not judging them. We're not condemning them for it, because guess what? They're on their journey. They're in their process. You can't expect them to be walking in tandem with you when they're not quite there yet. They're not below you. They're not above you. They're just on a different journey. And sometimes those things flare up because that part of their flesh hasn't quite gotten purified yet. It's nothing personal. It probably feels very personal. I know it feels very personal. I'm just going to say it does feel very, very personal. It feels very personal. But I'm telling you, just love them in the process and just know that what they try to do will not succeed. All right. This is the one that really, this one really got me. Because I know we've all been here. And we probably will battle this multiple times in our journey, okay? We are not immune to this one. We just have to ask for increased discernment and wisdom. All right. There will be times you step into Potiphar's house and it feels like you are where you're supposed to be, but it's not. Watch out for those seducing spirits, because when you don't comply, Potiphar won't care to hear you out. He will simply cast you out. Potiphar may have your back for a while because he's benefiting off the favor that's on your life. But when push comes to shove, he will not have your back at some point, and he will take you and throw you into prison. I am telling you, there are times where, Joseph was in Potiphar's house, and he was a servant / slave, but he had favor. He had the Lord's favor. And because the Lord's favor was on him, there was a level of comfort that came to him while he was in Potiphar's house. He was given charge over the house. He had responsibility over the other servants. He had responsibility over the belongings and the people within Potiphar's house. There was a stewardship there. But you can't take away the fact that he was still a servant. He wasn't a leader, but there was, if we translate that into nowadays, there are times where we can really step into a place where we are being appreciated. You feel the favor of the Lord on you. Others around you in that house sense and are benefiting off the favor of God that is on you. But that is not the place the Lord has set for you. And in that arena, there are going to be multiple seducing spirits. These enticing things that sound good, that look good, that might benefit you there for a little bit. But if you have the discernment like Joseph did, you're going to see that spirit for what it is, and you're going to drop your coat and get out of there, right? All of us, every single one of us, are going to reach a Potiphar's house moment in our walk. Guaranteed. It's guaranteed. You have to continually be asking the Lord, like Abraham did, that altar of direction. Give me directions, Lord. I need to go, know which way I need to go. Got to be doing that all the time. Discernment, discernment, discernment. Wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. You know, the gifts are already within you. You need wisdom and discernment to have those darn things working right, right? So just know that there might be some very enticing things that gets laid out before you, but you need to know if that's a door that the Lord is opening or if it's a seducing spirit. Just got to say it, because we all, you know, and this is not to judge or anything like that. We will all step into Potiphar's house because we will all miss the mark at some point. It's okay. It's totally okay. Because the Lord redeems and he brings those warning signs and he says, maybe you didn't listen too well. Yes, this looked like this at this point, but now it's not. Because sometimes things can shift and change, because some people either will change too much and go a whole different direction, or some people won't want to change at all, and that you have to go in a different direction. It will be different, and it will be unique to each and every one of us, right? There's no labels. There's no, you know, boxes that everything is going to fit in so perfectly. And that's why everything is kind of fluid and moving and changing. And that's why we have to constantly be asking for fresh vision, fresh revelation, and fresh discernment, so we don't fall into that seducing trap. Okay, that's that. I could probably go on a lot longer on that one, but that can be a whole new that can be a whole other broadcast, right? All right. I think, I don't even know how long I've been blabbing. We could probably, I don't know. I'll just kind of jump into this real quick, because the whole thing started with, my whole journey a couple weeks ago started with the Lord talking to me about Joseph and his process. But I really was feeling the heaviness to really address the stewarding of the promises, where we see the vision and then what we do in the waiting process, like with Abraham. I really felt that was important to touch base on tonight, because you know, there's been a lot of waiting, and just like a lot of perspective, and taking that wider view, I think is very helpful. It's been helpful for me, for the Lord to really show that to me, that the promises are just fuel for the purpose, right? It's not that final point. It's not a pinnacle. It's not, you know, just this one thing. It's a continual, ongoing thing, as we continue to walk through this life, and we bring others with us, and we ignite each other, because when I'm walking in my purpose, then you guys are walking in yours, and they're walking in theirs, and they're walking in theirs, and all of a sudden we're like all unified, and we're doing everything that the Lord created us to do. We might be one small, teeny, tiny part in this big, massive, vast plan that he has, but when we're all doing it, amazing. It's a masterpiece. Mind blown. So anything with Joseph, I think I just wanted to, you know, it kind of made me think. So Joseph had those first two dreams, the ones that he shared with his brothers, and then they got ticked and they wanted to kill him, and then they said, oh, well, we're just going to sell him off, you know. So they throw him in the pit. They lied to their dad, blah, blah, blah. Joseph was only 17 years old when he had those dreams. And because he was so excited, and, you know, he didn't have the maturity at that point in time. And that's, you know, he shared that with people who weren't able to understand or go along or support those dreams. We've all had that too. You know, we've all had dreams, and we've shared them with people that maybe didn't quite catch the vision. It's okay. Joseph did it. He survived. And so will you. Okay. You know, so he goes through this process. He gets thrown in the pit by his brothers, who he thought loved him, you know, sold off, put on the slave market. And that is just straight up humiliation right then and there, right? Because the slave markets at that point in time in that country, you were stripped down and put on display. Can't think of nothing any more humiliating than that. Okay? So he's doing all of that. Favor of God's with him this whole time. Ends up in Potiphar's house, all of that. We just talked about that. And then he's thrown in prison. So from the time he's thrown into the pit to the time he gets to the prison, I want to say it's like 13 years, right? A decent amount of time. I mean, that's a long time to be abandoned and rejected and hated by your family, the people that are supposed to love you. That's brutal. And that's a whole process of learning how to forgive. That's rough. That's so tough. And so then he's in his prison. And who would have thought that at 17 years of age, the dreams that he had, he would be walking in his purpose in a prison cell. Nobody can or should build boxes and ideas around the dreams that the Lord gives us. Because the minute we do that, we take away from his creativity. And don't we know that he is the most creative ever? I mean, look at each and every one of us. Not one of us the same, all of us masterpieces, right? All of us priceless works of art, hanging in his gallery for all to see. So if we take away from his creativity to bring about the very thing that he gives us, Joseph never would have envisioned the dreams that he had when he was 17 coming from a place of being in prison. Hello. Because I have to say that during this journey, this 13 year-long journey of being a slave and being in prison and all that crap, he worked through forgiveness. Because in chapter 50 of Genesis, his brothers, after their dad died, his brothers were terrified once again that Joseph was going to take out his wrath on them for what they did to him so many years ago. And Joseph's maturity shines through here, right? His forgiveness and his maturity from that time, that process, that pit, so to speak, it shines through so brilliantly, because he says, what you intended for harm, God intended for the good. And what's it say? For the good to accomplish what is being done now, the saving of many lives. Talk about finding the roses in the graveyard. I mean, so huge. Like, he had no bitterness, no hatred. He only had love for his brothers because he had that perspective shift. He no longer held the dream of, oh, hey, look, you guys are going to be bowing down to me, to, hey, look, I know this upset you. I forgave you. But look what the Lord did. He took these dreams and he moved me here to accomplish what those dreams were meant to accomplish. Right? So, he was called the dreamer for a reason. I don't believe that those were his first dreams. I don't believe those were his last dreams. But the ability to have the dream in the first place, then learning to steward it, but then in his prison, he took a deeper dive into his purpose. He'd never interpreted others' dreams before, and then he gets put in charge of the baker and the butler, right? And they have dreams, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm interpreting dreams. Whole new level of his gifting. You step into deeper levels of your gifting when you're stuck in a place where you can't go anywhere. Stewardship of your time with the Lord. I can only imagine what the conversations that aren't written about in the Bible that he had with God in that prison. It just blows my mind. And I can relate. I can totally relate. And so he steps a deeper purpose. He starts interpreting these dreams. And then these guys, because they were the king's or the Pharaoh's prisoners, they get released. They serve their time, they get released. And Joseph's like, hey, don't forget about me. Hey, remember what I did. Remember what the Lord had me do for you. He gave me, interpretation for your dreams. And of course, both of them forgot, because people are selfish and forgetful sometimes, right? until Pharaoh has a dream. You know, the one guy died, right? Because that was part of his dream. He got killed. And then the other one is like, oh, hey, wait a minute. There was this guy that I met in prison, and he interpreted my dream, and it all came true. So, hey, why don't you check him out? Who would have thought that the launching pad to the very dream that he had 13 years prior would have come from a prison and move him into a palace, which then gave him the authority to save those lives, to, you know, bring about a plan, because the Lord loves to put his people in place to enact plans that change and shift nations. Come on. That's got to preach right now, right? People that we would not expect, seated in high places to bring change and safety to a nation when a famine was coming. Come on. You know, and it all comes from stewarding a dream. It's all to shift nations. The dream that a 17-year-old boy had shifted a nation. It shifted a nation. And he just thought it was something that his family was going to be doing, that his family was just going to be bowing to him because they were the wheat or whatever it was, right? I don't remember all the details, sorry. But it shifted a nation, not just a family, a nation. He was able to save his family because of that. And he saved all of Egypt. That's incredible. It's mind-blowing to me. And I think the things that maybe sometimes we discount, like a 17-year-old's dream, is absolutely a nation-changing thing. And if we really have the perspective of, you know, from our heavenly places, we're going to see things so much more multi-purposed and so much more multi-generational, because that is our God. He is multi-purposed, multi-generational. I know my mom is getting to see still prayers that she prayed while she was on this earth are still coming about, still unfolding. Visions that she had, that she shared with me, I've seen. I know she saw them before I saw them, but I'm seeing them here on this earth. It's mind-blowing to me. And that is exactly what this is all about. It's holding on to, it's stewarding, it's trusting that when the Lord speaks the promise of the stars over you, and it comes in the form of one child, it's a nation changer. You are holding on to things that will shift nations. And if it just starts with you, that's a nation. Jacob was a nation. He had a nation set within him because of the promise that was given to his grandfather. Come on. I mean, perspective is everything when it comes to kingdom. And when we hold that perspective, it's really hard for disappointment and frustration to come in and cause you to birth those Ishmaels. We don't want to birth Ishmaels in this hour. We want to be the, that manifestation of his promise. One of the many. There are so many promises within our purpose. And all of those P words that he's given me, all of it comes about. The IT is in his time, in our training. All of it. All of it. And I really just wanted to speak to that, that we go through that purifying, that we get rid of our selfish ambitions over those promises. Because although they are for us, they're more for others and for kingdom than they are for us. We just get to taste it a little bit, but it's more to just pour out and share. Yes, Kelly, we are a Joseph generation. We are the dreamers, the ones that see the blueprints, and the Lord is empowering us to build that thing. He's giving us the resources to build that thing. This is the year to build that thing. you know, and I think that, you know, even though the past several months have been not that great, I can't not thank God for it. I thank him for it. Yes, there have been many moments where I have just been enraged over the idiocy, and I'm going to try to not get on my soapbox over it, but just idiocy. It's been maddening. The insanity has been maddening. But in that has been an incredible journey, right? The whole, you know, 2020 vision type thing, you know, our hindsight, they say hindsight's 2020. So if we can look back and see the perfection of God's hand in our past, we should already have the confidence to see the perfection of it in the future, in the now and in the future. You know, this year is the year of the mouth. Well, the year ain't over yet, so keep talking, keep speaking the words of the Lord, right? We speak from those heavenly places. We speak and function in his kairos timing of things, even though we live in the chronos. And if we function and speak and live within his kairos timing of things, because we're asking him for understanding of it, we won't be affected by the chronos time of things. It won't frustrate us. It won't let us feel caged in. It won't choke us out. It won't muzzle our mouth. Correct? And, you know, and the Lord also spoke to me about this year being the golden era. I kept hearing that too, the golden era. And he took me, of course, to Habakkuk 2, chapter 2, verse 14, where it talks about the glory of the Lord, the knowledge, that's what it is, the knowledge of the glory of the Lord will be seen throughout the earth as the water covers the sea or fills the sea. I can't remember the exact wording. I always screw it up when I try to quote scripture. I'm working on it. But I believe that because of this, the Lord using the plots and the plans of the enemies for our benefit, for his purpose, for his glory, that we are coming out as golden. His glory will be known and it will be seen because we have taken this time to steward the promises that he's set within us for this set time, to build that thing, to step out, to speak, to do whatever he's called us to do. You know, sometimes that speaking, it's not into a microphone. It's not into a phone broadcast thing, whatever he's got me doing right now. You know, sometimes it's just to that family member that you haven't spoken to in a while. Sometimes it's to that coworker. Sometimes it's, you know, to the Bible study that you attend, that you've kind of been nervous about saying something that's been on your heart. Well, the Lord's saying, say it. I put my words in your mouth. Speak. You know, what is that? Isaiah 49:2. I've sharpened your tongue like a sword. See, there I go again, screwing it up. Your tongue is like a. Hold on, I'm just gonna flip to it because it's such a good verse. I don't want to screw it up. I don't like screwing up my quoting. That bothers me. Okay. At least I remembered where it's at. I'm a work in progress. Progress? I don't even know. Isaiah 49, verse 2. Here we go. He made my mouth like a sharpened sword. In the shadow of his hand he hid me. He made me into a polished arrow and concealed me in his quiver. I was just on a broadcast not too long ago, and that verse came to me, and I really felt like I needed to say that just now as I read this, that we are no longer being hidden in his quiver. He is taking all of his arrows out, and he is shooting them. And he is an absolute pro marksman. He does not miss the mark. And he's taking you and placing you in the very targeted place that he wants you to speak in this hour. Like I said, it may not be to groups of people. It may not even be on a microphone. So don't get caught up in all of that. It may be, but it may not be. just know that whatever he sets you to, he is ordering your steps, and he is setting his words in your mouth. So speak them. Don't be muzzled by fear or insecurity any longer. There is a boldness that he is pouring out on his kids right now. I am not a fan of public speaking, but he's been having me do this for a reason. Still don't see the bigger picture here, but I know he's got one. So I'm just being obedient, right? Not my favorite thing to do. I get nervous every single time, but I will do it afraid because he has my yes. That's all I got to say. Do it afraid. Just do it afraid. Don't worry about rejection, because I'm telling you, if nobody knows your name, heaven does, and that's the one that matters. If the Lord is setting something for you to do, just do it. Just do it. Okay, there was one more thing. Oh, yeah, to just kind of close that up about not boxing in, how he kind of unfolds things for us. That it was a really good reminder for me that Jesus was a promise. He was a promise that was spoken back in Isaiah. You know, and when he came to this earth, he came in a way that nobody expected him to come. They were expecting Messiah to just come in all of his glory, right? But he came in the most unlikely place, in the most vulnerable, unlikely form. You know, he was this innocent, helpless little baby laid in a feeding trough. You know, you wouldn't expect Messiah, this big promise, to come like this. And then once everybody once they figured out who he was, and they watched him do these signs and these miracles and all of these things, he had masses of people following him and all of that. They still didn't see the fullness of the fulfillment of that promise, right? Because is it Isaiah 53 that talks about, let me just flip back over there again. They're like back-to-back scriptures, right? Where it talks about his coming, but then it talks about his suffering. His suffering. Isaiah 53, it talks about his suffering, how it will be bruised for our iniquities, you know, pierced for our transgressions. I'm totally jacking that up, but you know what I mean. Isaiah 53, go read it. It's the promise of carrying our punishment, right? That was a promise. And then it flips over to chapter 54, and it talks about the future glory of Zion. I'm not going to go through all of that. But in this promise being fulfilled, this long-awaited promise, however many hundreds of years it was between Isaiah and the other prophets that were talking about the coming Messiah, and then Jesus actually stepping foot on this earth, you know, what was his process between the time that he showed up as a 12, 13-year-old boy in the temple to when he showed back up on the scene at the age of 30? There was a process there, I'm telling you. Yes, he was fully God, but he was also fully man. So I'm telling you, he went through a process. There was a process. And he didn't stumble and fall like we do, but he still went through it, right? Because he had to understand fully how to walk the way we walk, so he could die and redeem everything that we needed redemption for. So in that, they didn't really see the fulfillment, the fullness of the fulfillment of that promise, because the fullness of that had to come in the death and then the resurrection. You know, and sometimes we don't want to see our promises put to death. Sometimes we don't want to have to lay that thing down for a moment, because sometimes we pick things up prematurely. Sometimes we pick things up and we talk about them way too soon, when we just should be talking to the Lord about it. Because when we're supposed to talk to others about it, the Lord will let us know, because he at the time that he wants us to talk about those promises with other people, he will have put us with people who are dreamers with us, who will get behind you, who will pour, gasoline on your fires instead of water. And so, sometimes we have to kind of put to death those promises. And so in order to see the fulfillment and the fullness of that promise, just like Jesus, he came, he conquered those things, but people didn't want to see a part of that promise that had to die, right? It had to die in order to live again. And so we just kind of have to understand that we will never fully understand the depth, the width, the breadth of every single promise that the Lord allows us to taste and see. That there's something so much beyond our capacity. We can go through all of the stories with Jesus. Mary and Martha, they knew Jesus could heal, but they didn't know he was going to raise the dead. Their expectation and their thought process of what that promise was able to do was very limited. And so as we dream and steward and actually receive those promises and steward and return them back to God, we need to understand that we will only have a small understanding of what each promise fulfilled is going to look like. And so I just wanted to encourage you to not build any boxes or preconceived ideas of these dreams and promises that the Lord gives you. Now, he does give them to you, and he will give them to you like a blueprint, right? I talked about that before on a previous broadcast, that conversation and that relationship between the architect, the Lord, and the builder, us. He gives us those blueprints, and he talks about the plans in order to bring those things about. And he will bring the right team to you. And I think that's really one thing I wanted to kind of, I really needed to say this, because back in that whole Potiphar's house scenario, that there are going to be people that can run with you up to a certain point. And then those people that can run with you, like Joseph's brothers, they were fine with him. I mean, they had some jealousy because the dad kind of favored him a little bit, but nothing ignited that more than him talking about the dreams that he had. And so it was no longer a slight jealousy on the brothers' part. They could no longer go with him where Joseph needed to go. And so they began the whole, plotting and planning his death, right? And so I just want to encourage you, because we will all reach places in our lives where there are just going to be some people that they don't have the ability to catch the vision. They may still want to come with you, like Joseph, because they're benefiting from the favor of God on you. And they know that the minute you leave that place, that favor is going to go with you, and it may not stay, right? And if you allow them to come with you, they will no longer be, how do I word this? They used to be level and running with you and a great support and a great encouragement. But then you get to this place where they're not ready to go there. They're either not ready or they're not capable of going there. And if they go one step further, they begin to feel and become like an anchor, and they will weigh you down. Or like Joseph's brothers, they can no longer be excited for you. They become jealous. And then we all know that envy breeds a lot of ugly things. And so the Lord, I think, is really moving us and shifting us in places and around people to make sure that as we ask him for that discernment, like we were talking about with Potiphar's house, that we don't get stuck around seducing spirits, that we don't get stuck in a place where people are just feeding off of the favor of God that is on our lives, because they're not willing to do the work in order to walk in it themselves. Does that make sense? So, yes, very much so, Gail. They used to benefit, but then they become a hindrance. And again, like I said before, this isn't a place to judge or condemn or anything like that. It's just understanding where they're at in their journey, where they're at in the process. You know, I think a lot about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were so full of faith, right? You know, they knew they were not going to bow to Nebuchadnezzar or his idols. So be what may, we ain't doing it, right? And in all the faith in the world, they said, you know, our God can deliver us, but if not, we will just go into the furnace. End of story, right? And, you know, it could have been, you know, one of those guys could have said, I don't know. I don't think I'm ready to die by a fiery furnace. And he would have hindered that conversation, right? And even though those guys were full of faith and they were just like, but if not, you know, how many times have we had but if not moments, right? We've reached those but if not moments. But they go into the fire anyway. I mean, they get led into the fire. Had they not gone, they never would have seen Jesus show up. They would have seen Jesus a different way, right? The Lord did save them in a way that they did not imagine, in a way they did not speak. They just figured either he's going to rescue us before the fire, you know, before we get shoved in that furnace, because that furnace is for sure death. So he's either going to just loose our chains right now and sweep in and get us out of here, or we're going to die and we're going to see his face anyway. That was their two options. That was in their mind. That was their limitation. But when you remove that limitation, see, we know how that story goes. How are you like standing right in front of that furnace, right? The Lord did save them, but in a way they never expected. A promise they never expected. Because Jesus showed up, their chains were gone, and they got to see Jesus while they were still alive on this earth. And yet everyone that listened to them testify about the ability to save, they all saw something amazing and miraculous that they would not have seen. And so I just think that as we walk through this, the Lord is going to surround us with people who will walk into the furnace with us, right? They will pour gasoline on our fires. They will dream dreams with us. They will build those blueprints with us. They won't try to suck the favor off of you, right? Because they're going to be carrying it themselves. And they will go into the pits and the prisons and the palaces with you. And I do know that I know that the Lord is really bringing kingdom connections to each and every one of us, because we cannot walk this stuff out alone. Cannot be a lone ranger in any way, shape, or form in this journey called life. And if you're doing anything with your life, which all of our lives are ministry, don't need to be called pastor, prophet, teacher, apostle, don't have to have a title, right? Our lives are our ministry. How we conduct ourselves on the daily, that is our ministry. And even in that, we cannot do that alone. We have to have people who will come alongside us, pray with us, speak life into us, and all those things that I just listed before, as we walk through our P.I.T, our purpose, our promises, our plan, all the plans, the pain, the prisons, the perseverance, the patience, learning, all of that. He's going to give us people to walk through every facet of that, because they help us grow too. They help us steward those promises too. They help us stay on that path. That's all part of that righteousness and shining his glory, right? All right, I'm going to end that there. I'm sure the Lord is going to have more to say, because I really felt like I needed to dive further into Joseph, but I really felt that I needed to just bring that perspective clarity, that the promises that you hold now are not the peak and pinnacle of your life. It's just the next step. And that there's bigger, more things coming that you have not yet seen. You know, the whole Jeremiah 33:3, the unsearchable things. You know, the things that he's given us to hold on to. Again, fuel for the journey. And that in that journey, he's going to continue to unveil and reveal things that are just mind-blowing to us. And I just wanted to encourage you to keep that heavenly seat, that heavenly perspective, and functioning and living within his kairos timing, so that the chronos and the things that go on within it do not move and sway you like a storm, right? You stay steadfast and you speak to those things and you're like, not today. Peace, be still. Not today, right? All right, I'm just going to pray over you guys, and then I'll let you go. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time. I thank you for the revelation that was brought tonight to share. I thank you that we all had our hearts open, our ears open to receive that very thing that you have poured into us tonight. I just thank you and I praise you. I ask you, Lord, and I thank you for blessing each and every person under the sound of my voice, that their purpose, they will see it in a whole new light, that they will look at the promises that you've spoken to them in a whole new way and begin to steward those and hold those differently than they had before. I speak against any frustration and disappointment that has come, that it has to go now in Jesus' name. That this perspective, this time tonight has erased all of that. That the Ishmaels that were trying to be birthed cannot come. That they will stay steadfast and wait for the promise. And we know, Lord, because you have spoken it, that we will not wait any longer. That your promises are yes and amen. And that this moment of time, you are bringing things about in the most miraculous and unexpected ways. Lord, you have marked every single one of us with your miraculousness. And we thank you and we praise you for it. And we return all things back to you, because they are all from you, Lord. And may we just continue to work with you and just be stewards of everything that you set upon us, Lord. Thank you for your favor. We thank you for your love. We thank you that you are ordering every single one of our steps. And we thank you for the kingdom connections that you are bringing us to. We thank you for those blessings and those treasures that you are giving us. In your name, Jesus. Amen. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I know it's not my favorite thing, but it actually is my favorite thing. It's my double-edged sword. I really do love being on here, speaking with you guys. I love reading the comments, and I love being able to pray for you. It's such an honor and a privilege that the Lord has given me in this hour, and I don't take it lightly. So I bless you guys. Have an amazing week. I'm sure the Lord's going to have me talk some more about this. I just don't know when, but I will announce it when that permission is given. I love you guys, and have an amazing night. Bye-bye.